Man, it's a nice day. The sun's out. It's not too overcast. It's not blazing hot. It's just nice. Nice, calm, manageable temperatures. Hey, what's going on? So today, we're going to talk about troubleshooting your Pentax camera. Or, no, maybe that's not the best term to use. Things to look for before you feel like you have to send the camera back to Pentax to get repaired, or to find out that there's nothing wrong with it, you get it back, you still have the same issue. So what things do you look at, or what things should you look for in regards to checking what the root cause of the problem actually is? For example, your screen's black. It's not displaying anything. Is it the board? The camera busted? Send it back? Not necessarily. Could be a very, very simple fix. Having trouble autofocusing, exposure control, all these different things. So we're going to get into things to look for in order to resolve your issues before you feel that you absolutely have to send the camera back to Pentax. So let's get into helping you out. Okay, we're going to start off with something you may encounter when you're shooting an AFC, and that is stop lens versus drive lens. Now, you may, when you're playing around with the Pentax K3 Mark III, maybe playing around with different settings and whatnot. Now, here's an example of what happens when you have the AF setting on what the lens should do if it loses focus. Right now it's on stop lens. So let's hit the shutter button, and as you'll see here, the focus markers or distance scales, nothing happens. So let's bring it closer into focus manually, and there you go, right? We'll do that again. Nothing happens because it's way too out of focus, and there you go. Now, the thing is, this only affects viewfinder shooting. So if I switch over to live view, bring it all the way out, it still focuses the lens. We'll go back to viewfinder. Nothing. So if you're having issues in regards to all of a sudden the lens is not focusing, make sure that you have your AF setting set to drive lens. So I'm going to switch that now. So action when AF fails, or when autofocus fails, drive lens. And now let's go all the way out, and there you go. So that's one element to look at, is the setting for driving or stopping the lens when autofocus fails. Okay, the next thing that we're going to take a look at very quickly is the venerable exclamation mark, that little thing right there. So I currently have the camera set in remote shutter shooting, right? So there's the symbol for the remote, the exclamation mark is there, and then you have the little clock timer thing, right? A little stopwatch countdown thing. So basically the exclamation mark is just warning you that you don't have it in regular shutter mode, you have it in remote, and with the timer, right? So let me switch this up again. I'll put it on regular timer without the remote, and you'll see the remote symbol disappears. You have the exclamation mark, and now you just have the timer. So let's move that to the 2-second timer. So let's turn off the timers and remote shooting. And there you go. There is no more warning, no exclamation mark, no nothing. So that is another thing. If you're wondering why there's an exclamation mark, most likely it's that you've changed your shutter shooting to timed or remote. Okay, so let's take a look at the back of the screen. Now this here in the center, that replicates the dial here, right? The 4-way, or well, I guess 5-way controller, because you have the OK button. So all the parameters are laid out exactly the same as this layout here. So you've got your white balance, your custom image mode, well, for me, the rear screen brightness, and you have your drive mode changes, right? So let's go into the drive mode and pay attention to the top of the circle right up here, right up there. So we'll put the timer on, and now you see there is the 3-second timer, right, for remote shooting. Now let's go to just the remote, and now the 3 is gone from there. I don't know why I had that accent. And then for remote, or not remote, but the self timer, 2-second, there is a little 2 there, and then 12-second, and you've got a little 12 there. And then turning it off, and it's back to slash, so there's nothing in there. And I have this, the rear outdoor view setting set at standard. If I go to -1, that's a big difference, -1 to 0. If I go to +1 or +2, and you'll see there's a +2 there. Bring that down to +1, standard. So all your parameters and whatnot should be listed there, right? The only thing is you will not get an exclamation when you're in remote shooting while you look at the rear screen. It's only at the top of the screen. It's only at the top LCD that will show that warning, right? So there's the warning there, right? That's the only place that you're going to actually see that. So just a couple things in regards to what you need to look at and where you need to look in the camera if you are having some issues. Let's move on to some others. Okay, another instance where you want to do a bit of troubleshooting is, say you're having issues in regards to autofocus, you're using the viewfinder, and your subject doesn't have a lot of contrast. So for this example, I'm just shooting the armrest of the couch back here. So there's not a whole lot of contrast for the camera to pick up, right? So we're going to use phase detect for the viewfinder. And as you can see, it's just cycling back and forth, back and forth. So now let's switch to viewfinder.
What? You mean live view, dummy?
Which focuses more on the contrast difference. And there you go. It focuses. Switch back to viewfinder. Can't focus. Live view. So there you go. That is another instance where you may want to change from viewfinder to live view, or just look at some of the other settings that you currently have and start from there before blaming the camera and feeling that you need to send it back. It could be just one setting that's completely mucked up or completely changed the way the camera is going to operate. Now let's talk about memory cards. So if you are capturing images and all of a sudden you're getting weird lines, or the images are coming out purple, or you can't extract the images, you can't move them to a computer, you've tried formatting the card, doesn't seem to work. Well, the first thing you should do is format the card in the camera. There are a lot of people out there that say, use the, the SD official formatting tool. You can do that. I've never had an issue with just formatting the memory card in the camera. Now, one thing I absolutely do suggest you do not do is use one of these. As you see here, it is a micro SD adapter, and inside this adapter is a micro SD card. Now, the reason why I suggest you do not use one of these is the simple fact that you have these contacts on this side, which then have to make contact with the larger adapter, which then has to make contact to the camera, right? So you have literally 3 different points of failure in total, right? So I know there's people out there that have been using SD adapters. They've never had an issue. I've never had an issue with this one. However, just to minimize the potential of having an issue, I suggest you do not use these at all. So the other thing, use a high quality SD card is my suggestion. However, be careful when you are purchasing these, especially off of Amazon. There are a lot of knockoffs to SanDisk cards. They are not the same. It's difficult to really pick out which ones are authentic and which ones are not. I only purchase these from local places. The other thing, I just realized, the other thing that you want to make sure is that your switch here is not on lock. There's a little tiny switch right here that locks the card, and now the card is unlocked. And there's a little tiny bit of writing there to let you know which side's which. This is a Lexar professional card. I've been using the SD cards since my K3. I've never had an issue with it. I have 2 of these. They've been absolutely fantastic. No problems whatsoever. They're pretty quick enough for, I guess first gen SD slot. And the Lexar card, I haven't had an issue with this one either. I purchased this one from a retailer as well. I will not purchase memory cards online. There's way too many knockoffs. So if you are having an issue, it could just very well be that you have a knockoff card, or you're using one of these. I'm not saying that these cards don't, it's impossible for them to fail. Anything is possible with technology, but what I'm trying to explain is how to help you minimize any potential of having a failure, right? So something else to look into. Okay, so next up we have the rear display. So if you run into the situation where you can't see anything on the display, so you can't see anything whatsoever, no matter what you do, changing parameters, nothing's working at all. You can access the menu shows up, you can preview images, but the shooting itself is not working. Press the info button. Still not working? Press the info button twice, and that will bring back the rear screen, right? And now when you change settings, you've got all your parameters that are changing, right? So always double check your info button. All right, so if you press it once, it brings you to the quick access menu. Press it twice, it turns off the screen. Press it once, brings you back to the access menu, but it does not re-enable the screen itself. Press it twice, brings you right back. Now when you're previewing images, if you have no information down here, same thing, press info. And that will bring you to the parameter shooting. Press info again, brings you to the details page, which gives you every single parameter that was used when shooting that image. And hopefully that helps. The other thing too is the sensitivity of the eye sensor. So as you can see, my eye is not at the viewfinder, right? If I put my hand here, so I am still pretty far away from the eye sensor. So you may want to adjust the sensitivity of the eye sensor, right? So those are some other things to look at. And also if there's some moisture or water that ends up here on the eye sensor itself, that can also trigger the eye sensor to malfunction. So you just want to kind of wipe off right underneath here. See where that little dot is, right? So you want to wipe there, and that should bring back the screen. And for the final piece of advice is when it comes to your exposure settings. So there is a setting on the K3 Mark III. I believe it's also on some of the older cameras like the K3, K3 Mark II, K1, K1 II, and the KP. I don't recall if I believe it's also on the K30, K50, K70, KF. And that is your automatic exposure compensation. So say you get your settings wrong, right? So I'm going to take a shot here. We'll do 1 second. I'm in TAV, as you can see here, right? However, I'm going to shoot 1 second shot here, and that's what it looks like. It's pretty bright. So now we're going to turn on the auto exposure value compensation, which will allow the camera to overwrite your settings. You notice here the ISO is blinking, right? So this is outside the parameter that would give a decent exposure. So let's see what happens if I do this shot again. And there you go, proper exposure. That was with the auto compensation off, and that is with it on. So that's something else to pay attention to, because sometimes when you're out and about and you are shooting and you're really into the moment, you don't always realize that you're outside the parameters depending on what it is that you're actually shooting, right? So that is another thing to take a look at if you're finding your exposures are all over the place and nothing seems to be adding up. Just try turning on the auto exposure value compensation and see how you fare after that. And those are my tips for today. Those are my quick tips in regards to things to look out for instead of blaming the camera or thinking it needs service or something is absolutely fundamentally wrong with the camera. Chances are it's not something that's wrong with the camera. It's a setting somewhere that you've inadvertently changed. Especially with the K3 Mark III, it is a pretty complicated camera. So there are a lot of different things to look at and dive into to try to figure out where the actual problem is. So I'm hoping that these tips, if you haven't experienced any of this, then this video means nothing to you, but hopefully it still added some value to different settings to look into and what they do. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. If you like it, leave a like, all that stuff, the usual. I appreciate all the support over the years. And I'm gonna go. Got to meet up with a buddy of mine visiting from Australia, and it's a nice day out, so I might actually go out and do some extra shooting for myself. And stay safe, be good, everybody. Be respectful to everybody. This world has gone absolutely crazy. Yeah, so again, I appreciate all of y'all, and stay tuned for the next one. I'm out.